Hi Damai, welcome. You're listening to People, Planet, Food. Conversations about the global food system that I hope are both a cause for optimism and a call to action. I'm Roger Robson-Williams, Chief Sustainability Officer here at Plant and Food Research. In this podcast series, I'm talking to some of the inspiring people I've met about what needs to change if we're to have healthy people living on a healthy planet and eating healthy food. In this episode of People, Planet, Food, I'm delighted to be talking with Katherine, a learning advisor at Climate Action Campus Ōtautahi. Ōtautahi is the te reo name for Christchurch, a city on New Zealand's South Island. The Climate Action Campus is a place designed to help students understand and take action on climate change. And Katherine, a secondary school educator, is passionate about climate-related art, cooking and gardening. She works at the Climate Action Campus 3 days a week and enjoys facilitating both groups and individual students from early childhood right through to secondary age, and makes an enormous contribution to the work of the campus. And I've had the pleasure of hosting Katherine and some of the students at my own property, along with my wife, talking about some of the things that we're doing at home to be more sustainable. So, Katherine, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me this morning.
I think before we get started and talk about the Climate Action Campus, it would be really lovely to hear a bit more about you and your personal journey to being an educator at the campus.
Okay, well, I am born and raised in the UK, brought up on what we call a small holding over there, but more commonly called a lifestyle block here. Yep, grew up Lincolnshire, which is about as rural as you're going to get in England, nothing compared to New Zealand. So we had chickens, goats, sheep, a few other small animals, large vegetable plot, that kind of thing. Farming background on both sides, one side Welsh, one side Irish, farming as far back as you go. So that is my background. After university, decided to go travelling with my brother. We took the train over the course of several months from the UK all the way through Europe, Russia, Mongolia, China, Vietnam, before flying to New Zealand, intending to spend a year here, which I did. Met my husband here, went back to the UK to finish off a master's degree, came back to New Zealand, been here ever since, did my teacher training here in Christchurch in Ōtautahi. Yes, some children come along, do some relief teaching. The most common, or the place I was the most often for relief teaching was Aotearoa Unlimited Discovery School, and that is the home school that the Climate Action Campus is the satellite campus of. So when I saw this job came up, jumped straight on it as a way to incorporate my home life into my working life.
Thanks, Katherine. That's lovely to hear how you landed in New Zealand. And before we talk a bit more about the work you do here, kind of interested perhaps to hear a bit more about your experience on that train journey and whether any of that has influenced your outlook on life now.
Yeah, absolutely. At the time, it definitely wasn't a choice made out of sustainability. It was a choice made out of tight pockets. And yeah, that idea, I really wanted to experience the countries that we were visiting as a local as much as possible. And I felt that when you fly into a place, you just suddenly land in a place or a city or town in isolation with no context around it. So by traveling by train, you cover a greater space of the country. You see how people really live. Yeah, you get more of the context of where you're living. And absolutely, the things that we saw along the way have had a huge impact in terms of how I want to live my life, and just seeing the simplicity that life can be and the happiness that there can be with a simple life, despite the challenges that there are. So yeah, I would say that that's something that I've unconsciously ended up incorporating in my life that I hadn't really considered until you asked the question.
And I think that's fascinating that you chose to travel by train because of a tight budget.
Yep.
And yet now I would imagine you'd choose to travel by train because of it having a much lower carbon footprint.
Absolutely. Just awareness that comes with age. But in my job now, trying to make sure that awareness is there for people at a much younger age than it was for myself.
Which is a great segue to the work of the Climate Action Campus. And I've had the opportunity to visit, thank you, and address some of the students, which was a fantastic experience for me. So tell our listeners a bit more about the work of the campus.
So the Climate Action Campus Ōtautahi, it came about 3 years ago. The idea of Vicky Buck, ex-mayor of Christchurch, and the idea was that it would be a hub, a community hub that schools could tap into, that young people could tap into, and it would allow them the opportunity to learn more about the climate, to learn more about the environment, and give them space and the resources to take action. Something that's been noted in the education world for a long time is the impact that it has on young people to see the state of the world as it is and to feel powerless. And the point of the climate action is to give some power back to young people. It can have a huge impact on their mental health in a positive way, to know that even in small ways that they can make a difference. They don't have to wait until they're grown up. They don't have to wait another 10 years. They don't have to wait until they're old enough to have an impact or be taken seriously. There's actually lots of ways that they can do that. In small ways, perhaps, but it's surprising what they can achieve at a young age. So the Climate Action Campus currently works with 29 schools and over 30 different community groups. We also run free community classes on a range of topics from horticulture, chickens, how to make homemade low-toxic cleaning equipment and products, how to garden with children, how to get children into gardening, nature play and the importance of nature play. We've done pickling and preserving, upcycling, sewing, conservation, anything you can think of, basically. We're running community classes that are free and open to anybody to access. So it is a school, but we're not limited to ages 5 to 18. We're interested in everybody.
Yeah, and certainly from the conversations that I had with some of the students, I was really impressed with their depth of understanding of some of the systemic challenges to broader scale action on climate. And where are they getting those insights from? Is that part of the work of the Climate Action Campus or Tatahi?
Yeah, absolutely. So each student comes with their own final background. Some students have parents working in the area that they're interested in. Social media, a lot of students are on social media and they pick up things from that and they have eyes, and it's fairly obvious. Teenagers do a lot of observation, maybe more so than they do talking. What we like about the Climate Action Campus is they can come and they can ask those questions. We can do a deep dive into them. The program that I've run this year is for NCA students. This is where we've been working with Roger and Melissa. And for the first term, every single week, I invited an industry expert. So someone working in an area related to climate change, the environment, food and resourcing. And every week we had someone come in and talk to these students in a small group setting and really exposing them to high level research and day-to-day life, what work looks like if you want to work in that arena once post-school. But what was really, really nice was seeing how the students grappled with those subjects and the depth of those subjects. We had students who are really interested in computer modelling of climate change and how that's developed over the years. Super interested in that. We had students who were really interested in township flood planning and making preparations for times ahead. Students who really, really engaged in the idea of regenerative farming and the complexity there, and transitioning to clean energy and the energy trilemma that throws up. So it was really good to get these students talking on a really deep depth and really grappling with some of these subjects and leaving them feeling that, they can actually do something about that and they can do something right now.
And I'm interested in exploring, if we may, that issue of empowerment and I guess supporting their mental health and well-being through feeling empowered and taking action on what can seem like a huge and intractable problem. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was really a driving factor behind why Vicky was interested in setting up a Climate Action Campus in the first place. Any teacher, any parent, anyone who's around teenagers will tell you there is a mental health crisis, huge mental health crisis at the moment amongst our young people. And a lot of it is surrounding the idea, as a teenager said to me, if the world's stuffed, what's the point? So to address that, to show them that it's stuffed if we keep going, but we can change, you can do something about it. And my personal motto is that it's better to have thousands and thousands of people doing the best they can, making the best decisions they can, rather than one or two people living a perfectly sustainable lifestyle. So showing them how they can make choices, decisions, sharing knowledge, talking, things that they can do, and also teaching them how to love the world, love nature, love the environment. A lot of work we do with younger students is around nature play, the idea that you don't really want to talk about climate change to children younger than around 8 or 9, just causes unnecessary distress. But what you can do is teach them to have a deep, deep love and connection to the natural world, because it's only through that love and connection that they will want to protect it, they will want to work with it, that they will realise and appreciate its benefits as they grow up. Yeah, and spending time outside is always amazing for your mental health. So we try and tie all of that in together.
Yeah, I think for me that sense of humanity being part of nature, connected to it and not apart from it is such a key to resolving the polycrisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse and so on and so forth. And just reflecting on the visit of the student group that you brought to Melissa and my home property, one of the memorable experiences for me was one of the students picking up a stick as we walked through a patch of woodland and holding it out for a peewaka rocker or a fantail to land on, and being thrilled, as we all were, when that kind of happened. And just a little snapshot of that connection with the more than human world. So thank you for bringing them so that we could have that experience. That's wonderful. I just wanted to explore a little bit more whether you yet have any kind of, if you like, numerical evidence of the benefits of the Climate Action Campus. Now, in asking that, I'm not suggesting I don't think it's doing great work, because I do, and it's early days, but whether you have plans to try and assess in any quantitative way the impact on mental health or other outcomes?
Yeah, so to start with, we've been keeping a bit of a running tally recently of how many people does the Climate Action Campus impact on a weekly basis, how many people utilise it. So towards the end of last term, we worked out that we had over 1,500 students that week. It was a busy week, but that's the week we were keeping tabs on, 1,500 students, and actually over 2,000 members of the community. We had an open day during that week. So in terms of the community that is building around the campus, that is having a huge impact. We have Delta Food Services, Delta Community Trust, and their food services are based partly at the campus, and they have formed a link with a local community preschool that also utilises the campus, and through that connection that they've made through the Climate Action Campus, they provide food parcels and clothing, financial advice, all sorts of things, and that's a relationship that came about because of the Climate Action Campus. But the other thing we see is we have a lot of students come to us who have the problem student label at their own school. Students who struggle with behavioural issues, students who struggle. We've had an art group that comes for art therapy on a weekly basis. But the reports that we get back afterwards is such and such did really, really well at the campus. We're surprised. And we say, which student was that again? Because we had no idea that that is a student that is tagged with behavioural issues, no idea that that's a student that teachers would usually be very cautious about taking off-site. They're simply not a problem when they come to us. We don't know which of these students they are. And often it's because we're primarily outside. We don't use the classrooms very much. We're primarily outside, and there's space and there's quiet, and you can hear children laughing, you can hear the birds, you can hear the wind, and it's just regulating. So I guess we don't have the data, but we can see with our eyes the impact that it's having on these children, and then also when they go back to their school and they're learning and they're in a more regulated state. Yeah, so really positive from where we're viewing.
Yeah, and certainly from my limited contact with the campus, I would say there's a very positive vibe about it, and the individuals that I've met that are going through that process seem to be, as I said before, extremely well informed and engaged and looking for ways to make a difference, which is great. So what are some of the challenges with running the Climate Action Campus Ōtautahi?
So the main challenge would be funding. We don't fit into a model currently. The positive news is that is being worked on. It's been worked on so that other campuses should be able to set up in the future and be a much more streamlined process. The framework will be there for them to start. So funding is a big issue for staffing. The other one would be transport is a big issue, because we have the campus, we have the facilities there, but you don't want people to be using transport unnecessarily. and hiring buses is very expensive. We've always got our eyes on an electric minivan and minibus. The options in New Zealand are limited, but there's good stuff coming in the next couple of years in that direction as well. So we're just keeping an eye on that. And then the other challenge we have is protecting the food that we grow from rabbits. We're right on the edge of the red zone near the Otakara River. So there's so many rabbits, which obviously are quite hard to keep control of. You can't go shooting rabbits in town or on Ministry of Education property. But what we've discovered, surprisingly, does work really well are scarecrows. So we've had a group of students, they made a scarecrow and it is working surprisingly well. So we're hoping that we can get some other tamariki to make us some more and put them in different areas of the campus and the grounds and see if it has the same impact elsewhere. A lot of the food that we grow on campus, students utilise themselves, take home for their own whānau. And we also have a community pantry that we try and fill up about 3 times a week on the property for anyone to take.
It seems like in some ways a rather benign problem to have, but just for any listeners who are not familiar with New Zealand or Christchurch, the red zone is an area that was very badly affected by earthquakes about a decade ago and has had the properties cleared from it, and so is essentially almost rewilding, which has many upsides, but clearly also supporting a large rabbit population. So funding, not surprisingly an issue, impact, not surprisingly very positive. What's the potential for scaling the Climate Action Campus concept beyond Ōtautahi Christchurch?
So we're very, very open about how we have set up so far on our website, which is just Climate Action Campus. We're very open about that process. We often have people come in to look around, see if they can set it up in their own area. We would absolutely love to see this kind of setup in as many different places as possible. Just the benefits we're seeing to our local children in Ōtautahi, we would love to see that countrywide. With the changes that are coming from the frameworking side of how it would be funded, I think by next year it would become much easier, be a lot less loopholes to jump through, to work forward to set it up. And yeah, if anyone ever had any questions, we're always very open and willing to talk to. At the minute, we are a satellite school of Aotearoa, and just having that connection with the lead school is actually really, really nice. So that's always a way that you could go about starting it as well.
So can you explain a little bit more what you mean by a lead school?
So a satellite campus is, it's just a campus off-site from the main area, but your leadership is the same. You'd have the same principals, same office, same staff, all that kind of thing. You're connected. So we have Aotearoa students come out nearly every day of the week to utilise the campus, which is amazing. And in terms of starting up a new place, it gives you a ready-made community.
And in terms of starting up a new similar kind of campus, what are the physical things that you would suggest people think about having as part of that, as part of the kind of physical experience that the students get to engage with?
I'd say having as diverse a range as possible on the site in mind, or at least the capacity to make it diverse in terms of natives and habitats and vegetable growing and fruit trees and mini orchards. We have bees, all sorts, as many different things as possible, and making connections even before you have the place sorted, making those connections with your local native growers, with your local vegetable growers, with your local community gardens, with your local kura, building those connections together so that when you have a place, you're ready to hit the ground running.
And you're clearly, not just you, but you and your colleagues are doing, it would seem to me, a really good job of making those connections and building that network within the wider Ōtautahi region. Presumably you're still open to more connections and more other organisations and people getting involved. What would your kind of ask be in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So myself and another colleague started in March 2023. When we started, there was 8 schools tentatively on board. And those first couple of terms we spent building connections, attending meetings, sending emails, just meeting and greeting as many people as we possibly could. And as I say, we're at 29 schools and school groups now and over 30 community groups. So the need and the desire is there. It's about connecting the dots. Yeah, anyone interested, we always get in emails. On the website there's booking form, inquiry form. We have a lot of drop-ins, which we welcome. It's not a school in the kind of sign-in at reception sort of way. It is very much that community hub, and we get community donations of sewing materials and plants, seedlings, all sorts, and we welcome it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And what new initiatives have you got in the pipeline? What things are you excited about developing over the next wee while?
So recently we've had the Amaze Ink project going on, which has been organised by Mel Hillier from the Christchurch City Council graffiti team, which has just been amazing at lifting the face of the campus, really. So she put a call out to graffiti artists and local schools, school children, anyone, to say that we have a canvas for you, the school that makes up the maze part of the Amaze Ink project. And anyone who wanted could put forward a proposal to paint on the walls, claim it as their own, with messages about the environment and nature and sustainability and climate action. So we've had over 90 artists involved so far. The campus is looking fantastic, but we've got lots of walls left. And we're just finding that it's an absolutely brilliant teaching tool to both the students on site, but also, worldwide. The local Christchurch Chinese community is really engaged with it, and had interviews and YouTube videos in China and calls and different things like that. So really, as a term of connection, those kind of community events are amazing. We have a March market each year and a spring market, which again is an amazing point for the community to come and engage on the campus, and also great for us to be able to showcase those local artisans and those local little businesses that are plugging away, doing what they can, and just giving them a platform to share for people to see. So they're always amazing events.
And as an occasional visitor to the campus, I've been impressed by the sense that when you arrive, you know you're somewhere special. And I think the murals are a big part of that. And as I recall, there are some impressive bird life murals in particular that struck me. Have you got any of those images on your website? Could you share with listeners what your website address is, so if people actually want to get a sense of what your campus looks like, they can perhaps have a look?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's climateaction.school.nz, and also our Facebook page, Climate Action Campus Ōtautahi, and Instagram is c.a.c.ōtautahi. Lots and lots of pictures there.
And actually, physically, where are you in Christchurch? You mentioned being near the red zone, but your address?
Yeah, Avonside. So it's 180 Avonside Drive. Most people in the area would be familiar with it as the old Avonside Girls High site before they moved out to New Brighton. So we've moved in and we've taken over.
Thanks. Thank you. So you talked about some of the kind of initiatives. What you didn't mention that I thought you might was energy, because I know that's something you personally are interested in. Could you talk a bit about that in relation to the Climate Action Campus and your broader work as an educator?
Yeah, absolutely. So green energy, clean energy is something we're very interested in. We have solar panels up on the school buildings, and we have devices so that the students can monitor the energy that's been generated and where it's going. We currently have a very exciting project in the pipeline to set up a solar farm on site. That's not been done before on ministry property. So again, there's lots of loopholes. That's all been worked through. So we're hoping that in the future that will go ahead. We're very hopeful it will, but obviously nothing is concrete yet. And also we're interested working to develop like modules based around clean energy for students to engage in on an NCA level, so that that's something that they can learn about. And really as part of the community hub idea, and we want to build it so that energy plays a part of that. It's not just food security that we're addressing. It's not just education we're addressing. We want to be addressing energy and energy poverty, energy hardship in the local area as well.
I feel we do just need to explore energy almost as a sidebar just a little bit, because you've got an interest and some expertise in this. So I get the need for renewable energy. It seems like a brilliant initiative to have a solar farm on the campus. What are your views on the need for society as a whole to actually just consume less of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that I guess it's something with our younger students we're less explicit about. We try to show them what that looks like. And then it's always great to see as they get to sort of 12, 13, 14, that light bulb moment where they're realizing, hey, growing these vegetables and things, it's really fun, but there's no food miles. It's like literally 0 food miles, and we've got this food. For Matariki, we have a lot of schools that come through, and we do activities that link to the 9 stars of Matariki. And one of those is goal setting, looking forward to the year ahead. So we got a lot of our students this year to think about, hey, you're at the Climate Action Campus, if you're making a goal for the year ahead, what goal could you make that would positively impact the environment or the climate in some way? And even students as young as 6, 7 were talking about turning off their electronic devices at home when they're not using. They were talking about walking to school more and getting up earlier. Like, they were literally thinking of the logistics of, if I want to walk to school, I need to get up earlier so that I can get dressed. We could take the dog, but that's going to add extra time. It was really interesting to see really young children start to think about ways in which they can make low energy use just a normal part of their life.
And in a way, a bit of kind of early systems thinking there in terms of the logistics, and walking the dog as part of that. That's kind of wonderful. So is there one thing coming up that you're especially excited about?
I think for us, it's just impacting as many students as possible. After the end of a day at the campus, the students are just fizzing with excitement, and they can't wait to go back to their own kara and put into place the things that they've learnt. So we're on 29 schools now, but just to build that, and we really see that the momentum is picking up, it is moving forward, just the impact that has on, and remember, we're in the middle of a city. These are city children. Just giving them these experiences is amazing. We're excited to see that this impact is going to be spreading, and more Tamariki will be able to experience and share what's going on the campus.
Thank you. Yeah, and it seems such an important part of us moving towards a society and in the advanced economies of food system that is fairer and healthier and environmentally restorative, and helping these students to really experience what that might look like seems just incredibly worthwhile. So thank you. And thank you also that you have offered to bring a group of the students back to the property that Melissa and I live on in September to help us with some native bush regeneration. So very much looking forward to reconnecting with them and benefiting from their physical labour planting some native plants. So thank you for that. And I'd just like to change tack a little bit now. And you've talked a lot about the work of the Climate Action Campus and your contribution to that and your hopes for that going forward. It's clear that in your own life, you are trying to make good choices for future prosperity for humanity. And I just wondered if you'd be prepared to share a bit of what that journey looks like for you and your whānau.
Sure. So there's myself and my husband and our 2 daughters who are 3 and 2 at home. So our goal is to make a sustainable lifestyle normal for our children, not something that they view as a hardship or a change or anything, but just something that is completely normal, everyday, automatic. So we try to be plastic free as much as possible. So little children, that includes them. They have barely any plastic toys. Secondhand toys are amazing. My personal view as an educator is the fewer toys, the better. The imagination is the biggest toy that they need. We include them when we go foraging around the red zone. They absolutely love it. We get them involved in our garden at home. It's really small, but it's absolutely amazing what you can provide for yourself out of a small garden. We have a dehydrator. They can be really cheap to buy, so that we can dehydrate things, preserve them for the future. We did splash out on a preserver for canning or bottling, as it's called over here. That was a splash of the cash, but that's something that you can buy with multiple families and share. My husband is a hunter, so all our red meat is sourced through that. I raise chickens with a friend, sustainably organic chickens, so that we have white meat that we eat and that we know the provenance of, we know the lifestyle, we know that they've been well cared for, well looked after. It's quite funny when I reflect on it, actually. These are all things that my family did growing up. We reared our own chickens, we reared our own lamb. Mum had a huge vegetable plot. At the time I thought, my parents are so boring. They're in their 20s and they're gardening, they're doing all these things. And then you have to sit back and say, maybe I turned into my parents a little bit here. So we want it to be normal for our kids. And often the lifestyle comes across as, or it can come across as something you need a lot of money to do. It's a lifestyle that we fell into during COVID because we had no money. I couldn't work. My husband was down on the weekly payment, the $500, whatever it was that was from the government at the time. We had no garden. We'd recently moved into a house and I was ill at the time. I couldn't stand in the queue for the supermarket. He was still working full time despite his lack of pay, and we didn't have food. And that was a huge eye-opener for us that we could find ourselves in that position. And that's when we realised the value in our parents' lifestyle. And we had to start from scratch and build it up. But it's amazing what you can do. In Christchurch particularly, there's over 60 community gardens that you can be involved in. The red zone is a huge source for foraging. And it means that our weekly budget, we have a weekly budget of $125 because we don't have to pay for our meat and we can source the rest from local greengrocer and pack and save. And we try and go to markets whenever we can at the weekend, but with jobs that's hit or miss. But just doing what we can, and natural fabrics and fibres for clothing, that kind of thing. Cars are always secondhand. That's an EV is an option, but if you feel you can't afford that, that's not an option for your family. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing the best that you can do, and that's buying a secondhand vehicle. Yeah, I always say our motto is absolutely do the best that you can and that's manageable for you, that you don't burn out. Lots of people doing that is going to have a huge, huge impact. And my family all live in the UK. It's very important to us that we maintain that connection and that we go and visit them as regularly as we can. The fact that we do that we fly, doesn't mean that there's no point bothering in every other area of our life. The fact that we need, or I feel the need to go and visit my family, and we live in New Zealand because of my husband, that is a fact of life. But absolutely, we can still be sustainable in all those other elements in the smaller areas of our life. It does add up and it does make a difference.
There are so many directions we could take this conversation in, and I would love to. One we definitely need to briefly explore is foraging in the red zone. So we've talked a few minutes ago about what the red zone is by the river there. What are you foraging for? What sorts of foods do you find in the red zone?
So largely we're looking for fruit and fruit trees. So bear in mind that they cleared away the houses, they cleared away the roads, the driveways, the garages, but they didn't clear away the gardens. So 10 years, 11 years, whatever we are now on, a lot of it is rewilding, but the fruit trees are still there. The citrus, they get worse every year. Citrus is kind of high maintenance. So 5 years ago, we got great lemons and limes out of the red zone. That's not so good now. But your plums, your pears, your apples, your crab apples, grapes, there's loads of grapes in the red zone. It's fantastic. And actually, if you go online, you can find that there are maps of the red zone. It has been mapped so that you can go and see where the different fruit is. And then there's occasionally you can find different areas of little vegetables. Community gardens are always great. Go down there, get involved, and in return you get some vegetables. Yeah, so we have an elderflower. Who doesn't like elderflower cordial? We absolutely love it. We've always got a stash in the freezer ready to bring out in winter to stick in your honey and lemon to pep you up a bit. Yeah, so just a fantastic resource.
Yeah, okay. Well, for anybody living in Otatahi, Christchurch, there's a top tip if you're not already foraging in the red zone, and look for one of those websites to help guide you through that. Another thing I just wanted to come back to was that sense you alluded to of, in a sense, kind of going back in time to habits and practices that your parents and in my case my grandparents had with preserving food and growing their own food and so on. And a colleague of mine, a friend, a very wise chap called Stephen Wallace, was reflecting on a podcast I recorded with him that if he had a superpower to make the world a more sustainable place, to ensure long-term prosperity for humanity, it would be to enable people to see that the way things are today isn't the way they have always been or the way they always need to be. And what you just illustrated there with that, alluding to your parents, is in effectively less than a generation, we can become accustomed to a very different and in this case unsustainable way of getting our food, which is just assuming we always will buy it from a supermarket. So thank you for that. And the final thing I wanted to say by way of diversions, and then I'll come back to you because that's who people want to listen to, not me, but was your point about cars in particular and EVs and the fact that in some cases making the decision you would most like to make isn't possible because of financial constraints. And I often reflect back on something that Rod Carr, the chair of the Climate Change Commission, said, which was that those of us who have the resources to make the right decisions, there's even more responsibility on us to do so. And I just echo your words that people need to do what they can with the time and the resources they've got available and not feel guilty or somehow inadequate if they don't have the time or resources to do everything that they would like to do. Anyway, coming back to you, a question that I think all of the listeners would love to hear from you is, for them, what would your kind of one top tip, if they wanted to be more sustainable in their lifestyles, what would your one top tip for them be?
My top tip would be support local. And there's so many reasons for that. One, the community that you build, supporting local, getting to know your local growers. Christchurch is amazing because we have so many weekend markets and farmers markets at the weekend, which means that you actually have an opportunity to go and meet your local growers. Grow your own, that's amazing. Make your own. There's so much satisfaction out of getting something secondhand and whacking out a sewing machine or just hand stitching and making it fit you, making it fit your children, making a cushion cover out of some grandma's old curtains. It's all sustainable, but it's nourishing for you, and it creates stories, it creates storytelling and community. So support local.
And I've got to ask this question of you, Katherine. You have a young family, you have a job, you are growing food, you're raising chickens, you're doing all these things. I'm sure some listeners will be saying, how on earth do you find time to even think about sewing anything for you or your children? So how do you juggle all of this activity in your life?
I think it's a bit of being a jack of all trades, a master of none, dabbling in things. My hobbies would be along that direction. I love reading, I love travelling. That's how I ended up here. But also using my hands, being outside, being in the garden, and actually involving the kids. They love it. It slows you down for sure, and you're less productive. But I like to see it as I'm teaching them a skill for the future as well. And I work 3 days a week, not 5. It's a privilege that I can afford to do that, but that is a definite choice to give that extra time to be able to do those kind of things. We don't have a TV in the house, so I guess that cuts down our time. I know I can waste enough time on my phone without watching anything else. Yeah, I think it's a matter of choice, and for some people that is more important. We don't have a gym membership or a gym pass, but health and fitness is really important to my husband, so he tries to go running after work whenever he can. Yeah, he likes hunting, likes going in the wild. For me, the best weekend ever is when he takes the kids with him. That's amazing. Takes them for a day trip and you can just relax at home. But yeah, the reality of it is I don't do as much as I could. I don't have the time to do it, but it's not feeling bad about that and not letting the fact that you can't accomplish as much as you want put you off from even doing a little bit.
Yeah, that's just a wonderful kind of recurring theme that's come through a lot of what you've said. You know, do what you can, but don't feel bad about the stuff you perhaps would like to do that you can't get to. So thank you for that. Now, I hesitate to ask whether in any of this you find time to listen to podcasts or read books or anything like that, but I often like to ask guests if they have a recommendation for a book or a podcast or something of that nature related to sustainability in the food system.
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. It feels slightly hypocritical being interviewed for a podcast when I'm not a huge podcast listener. I like silence. I like that free space in my mind to think. But when I do get to listen, the Nutritional Farming podcast by Graham Sate is a great listen. Yeah, for anything local. And also, it's quite hard to find New Zealand-based podcasts, but that's a great one if you are. And in terms of books, there's just so many for adults out there, it's hard to pinpoint. But for children, one that I absolutely love is called Change Starts With Us, and it's by Sophie Beer. And it just, it talks about all the things that you can do. Change starts with us, and it's got absolutely fantastic illustrations. Talks about planting trees, choosing nude food, so that's the no plastic thing, saving power, bringing your own water bottles, all sorts of different themes. And the pictures are amazing. And it's a great little book for kids. I would say it's hardback, so they can't destroy it too badly. And the images are amazing. So from toddler onwards. Change starts with us. Sophie Beer is a great resource for your children.
Thanks. What a great recommendation. We haven't had a children's book recommendation before, so thank you very much for that. And I guess my final question for you is going back to that superpower issue that I alluded to earlier. Sounds perhaps a bit trivial, but guests have come up with all sorts of interesting and thought-provoking superpowers that they would love to have to make the world and our global food system more sustainable. Do you have one on your wish list?
I do. I would wish that organic, sustainably grown food is accessible to every single person on the planet, particularly children. And that I guess this is my second one, is that knowledge that has been lost, that knowledge gap that we find ourselves at now, that often Indigenous knowledge, local knowledge, rural knowledge could be restored.
It seems to me that you're kind of exercising that superpower in your work at the Climate Action Campus Otatahi.
We try.
Katherine, it has been a complete delight, as I knew it would be, to have this chat with you today. I've learnt a great deal. I really, really appreciate you taking time out from a busy life to have this conversation with me and listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have you given me reason for hope, for optimism? You certainly have, through the work that you're doing and the interactions that I've had with some of the students that you're supporting, definitely. Have you offered a call to action? Yes, and I love the fact that not only have you provided a wonderful menu of things that people can think about doing to make their own lives more sustainable, you've been incredibly humble in making it clear that even you don't manage to do everything that you would like to do, and that's really helpful. So thank you very much indeed. And for you listeners out there, thank you very much for listening to this episode of my podcast series, especially if, like Katherine, what you really enjoy is silence. If you're interested in more conversations about people, planet, food, please do subscribe to Sigest and rate and review the show, and of course share it with anybody else you think might be interested in this series. And if you've got any questions or, better still, suggestions for interesting people that you think I should have a conversation with on this topic of people, planet, food, please contact me on sigest@plantandfood.co.nz. Now, coming up soon, I'm going to be chatting with some more interesting people, in particular about energy in the food system and about the impact of food production on our planet's life-supporting systems. And it's all aimed at making our food system healthier, fairer, more resilient, and a force for environmental good. And with that, I will round out this podcast. Thanking you very much. Until next time, Mā te wā. See you soon.